So CONcoction's a small con in New Jersey. This was the first year. It's by the folks behind Page, which is the Philadelphia Area Gaming ex- Exposition, PH, whatever. Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, I guess. That's Page. And that's kind of on the outskirts of Philadelphia. This one, it's not too far from Philly. It's kind of, I don't know. I guess we could look at southeastern New Jersey, maybe eastern New Jersey. New Jersey. Hey, Taco Loco, we're looking at. Well, this is going to be CROWS. Maybe I should zoom in. I had the double. It's here. So the page you're looking at. Maybe we should go single page so I can zoom in. The page we're looking at here is the first page of the CROWS playtest. So I've had a lot of scheduling things coming up, and I really couldn't commit to anything. Originally I was gonna try to run a game there, do something there, and my schedule's got all out of whack. So ultimately it was a 3-day con, and I could only go the one day, the Saturday. It's also a 2-hour drive, which I didn't really know when I first, I did it, and it's doable, but it's maybe not. It's not ideal for me. 2 hours in, 2 hours out. So it's a 4-hour before you're getting there. 4 hours kind of clocking off the day. So one of the things that's been really fun for me is going to a bunch of these small conventions, regional to the Northeast convention. So, you got PAX U, to a lesser extent PAX East, which I didn't go to this year. There's ShireCon in Connecticut. There's ArcaneCon in Massachusetts. There's Page outside Philly. There's now CONcoction. And there are even some other ones that I didn't hit. There's some kind of OSR con that I've heard decent things about that's also in around the Boston area. I think there's Rising Phoenix Con, which I've heard about, but I haven't had a chance to go there yet. But anyways, you're going to these cons. I'm just meeting, and me in particular, because I'm talking to people not just as kind of like a convention goer, but sort of as a content creator. I'm trying to make connections with people. You end up running into people, whether it's just folks you've met on the internet who are also making stuff and vending stuff and doing whatever. So I almost feel like there's like these con friends who I don't really see. I don't see at all outside the cons, but have fun kind of talking to them and saying hey at the cons, right? So like shout out to Mel, to Sean, to Dale, Eon, amongst the folks who will be at various cons. So when I go to the con, oftentimes I'm not really looking to game. If I'm not running my game, maybe I might look if there's a game that somebody I know is running. If they could use an extra person or something like that, I'll jump in. But I'm not. I'm usually going to kind of meet and kind of do things like that, and not so much gaming for myself. If I'm there for a long time, great. But when I'm there, especially for a day, I'm not really thinking about it. Yes, and thanks, Ian, for I will in the chat has dropped links to the I will pin this for the CROWS playtest. So I'm getting to that though, I promise. So I get to the con, I'm hanging out, talking to different people. It's getting to be towards the afternoon. I'm actually thinking about because I got there, I didn't leave as early as I wanted to, so I didn't get there till again after a 2-hour drive. I left around 10:30, so I'm not getting there around 12:30. Talking to folks for a bit. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, well, let me go. I want to take a little bit of break. So I go, it's in a place called Vineland, New Jersey. It was a nice little convention center. I say little. It's not, if you've been to, PAX East, the Boston Convention Center, or the Philly one, whatever the Philly one's called, or, in New York City, the Javits Center. Those are huge convention centers. This is decidedly not that. It is maybe a local or, for this part of New Jersey convention center. It has 2 floors. I think they had the whole thing. I don't think there's another part of it. And it's got kind of a bi-level design. So it's got, and I think Ron, who is the kind of Page/CONcoction person, the organizer, did a good thing. And I think put the vendor spaces basically on the bottom floor and the gaming on the top floor. And what that meant was that you didn't get all kinds of crazy sound. So you can have people upstairs who are gaming. That's great. You can come down, and it felt like you get a little bit. Just gave it some nice spacing. You could talk at kind of normal volumes, and that was good. So I'm down in the vendor hall, and then finally it's like 3 o'clock or so, or 3:30, and I'm thinking, okay, let me see what's going on. I just want to kind of walk the tables. DM Tales I saw earlier for a brief second. I thought, oh, maybe I'll say hi to Wes. I'll say hi to Wes again. I was wanting to say hi to Ron. I didn't, and then actually run into Ron until way at the end. Let me just see what's going on, right? So I'm walking the tables and I'm looking around. I don't see anybody, and I'm always looking for their other folks who are, Tom Wilson does ShireCon. I've run into him Page. I think I really expected, oh, maybe I'll run into Tom doing something there. I didn't see him. Doesn't mean he wasn't there, but I didn't see him. In any case, I'm looking around. And I'm also looking for a place to sit and eat a little bit of food. And I see this table in the corner. And I'm like, I think that's James Introcaso. I'm like, I mean, he's got a recognizable face, right? He's not someone who you're gonna kind of miss. So I'm like, okay, what's going on over there? And I thought at first, like, are they running? Is he doing a draw steal game? And and there happened to be the table next to them was empty. So I thought, oh, I'll sit down here. I'll eat a little bit. There was one other person who I'd met a few minutes ago who was also sitting there. And they actually coaxed me into playing. We're going to run a game and nobody signed up for it. It was something called Hell of a Town, which is by the Broncolonia people, and it's kind of a cartoon game. We just played a really brief little scenario, so not that much to chat about. But so I kind of played through that scenario, but I'm always kind of, my ear is kind of like, well, what are they playing over there? And I'm like, this doesn't sound like Draw Steel. And there were minis, and he had the mana. I'm like, is that CROWS? And CROWS, of the MCDM offerings, CROWS is the one that look, I don't really need another OSR game. Okay, and this is no shade against any of the games. Well, I don't really need one, but I'm interested in them. Even just intellectually, like, oh, I'm interested in them, right? So I think this is CROWS, and I get little bits and pieces like, oh, it is CROWS, and then I'm thinking like, nuts. Why didn't I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't do my research. Why didn't I look around and try to sign up for that? So there was a help desk there, kind of with a board. It really was on a screen that had kind of games, and they're scrolling through the games. And I asked the guy, well, what's around? I'm looking at my watch, like, what's around at around 5? Because I'm thinking, like, if I do I could do a slot at 5, and right now it's around 4. I'm like, okay, I could do a slot around 5. And then if I hit the road at 9-ish, get home at 11, that's okay. Traffic will hopefully not be too terrible if the turnpike is kind. And all of a sudden it rolled up. Oh, there's another CROWS playtest at 5. And I was like, whoop, sign me up. So I signed up. And I just kind of hung around for another 45 minutes until James showed back up. And I actually had to kind of wave him over to the table because the way the tables are organized, the numbering system was a little bit off. And I could see him. I did talk to him very briefly after his game when he was walking down the stairs, and he was saying something about, like, he had another game. And I said, oh, I'm going to be in your game in like 45 minutes. And I was like, okay, great. So then when the time came, I could see him looking around the room, wondering where the heck is my table. I'm like, it's over here. We're over here. We're over here. So I thought, so that's kind of the setup. And I'll just say now, James was awesome. Super nice, ran a really good game, was just really excellent all around. If you saw somewhere I posted, I actually got to chat with him a few minutes afterwards. Well, he was asking for feedback, and then I actually ran into him in a Wawa. If you know Wawa, if you know, in a Wawa on my way out of town, out of Dodge, and then spent a few more minutes talking with him. Really awesome guy. It was a really nice kind of meeting experience. It was great to talk to him. And he's local. He lives in Jersey. He's somewhere in that Jersey area, and he flies to California for like every couple of months to do big stuff over there. But so that was that. But I thought, before I get into the kind of gameplay part of it, why don't we look at the actual rules, and then I can get into kind of my experience playing through the rules, and that yada yada. Because and again, this just speaks to him. This wasn't something where he gave us a whole lot of, he didn't have to give us a whole lot of background. I mean, look, I'm coming at it. I even though I haven't played Draw Steel, I'm familiar enough just having read and watched stuff that I know the kind of very basic mechanics, like the power roll and how that works. Like I knew that stuff, but he just kind of laid in a little bit of stuff, and then anything else he just kind of brought up as we were playing, which I thought was a really smart approach. So we didn't have to, he wasn't like, here's this 5-page booklet, read it or anything like that. It was really good and smooth, and credit to him because he ran a 4-hour game, then took an hour break and ran another 4-hour game. And I know I wouldn't want to do that. I don't know what circumstance would make me be like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So, and I certainly wouldn't put myself out to do that. And he didn't seem to be lacking in energy or anything, doing that. So, hats off to him. Ian says he seems like a real sweetheart of a person. Yeah, I think his persona, he comes across very genuine. I've watched a little of like the draw steel, right, when they were doing the draw steel kind of playthrough stuff. And I think my only thing with him is he seemed like a normal guy jamming, and I was wondering like why don't they have Matt do it, because Matt seemed to be more like But I think in person in particular, it may just be something that just doesn't come across as much in person. I think he can he does everything you want a GM to do, and he's really nice about it. So I mean, if you have a chance, because I was wondering when I was first watching, like, are they doing some kind of roadshow going around doing this? And I think like, no, this is really just a local con to him. So come, I think there was someone else, one of the other people on our table, I think knows him outside of there and is in the kind of same town or whatever, the same gaming store. I think that, whatever, he's in the same circles. So he, this is his part of Jersey. And so he was here. So like really cool and totally unexpected. So I'm going to skip over in this quick read through we're going to do. I'm going to skip over the stuff about, maybe I'll read a little bit about the kind of fortune or death part, but I was going to say I'm going to skip kind of the background stuff on the setting. I didn't get to experience the setting much. It's a one-shot. We're there. So we didn't give us some big, like, let me give you a whole lore dump on Cornath. Like, we didn't need it, and it wasn't necessary, and, so he didn't give it to us, right? But I'll try to pick and choose, and if someone here is more familiar with the CROWS, what should we say, the CROWS rulings or whatever, then just let me know and I can go hit it. Or the CROWS rules. Okay. Fortune or death. CROWS is unfair. Doesn't care about your character's level. Charge at a behemoth without a good plan to take it down, and you're probably going to end up as a puddle of gore. This game's math hasn't been balanced to ensure players win most of the time. But the unfairness goes both ways. Come with a clever plan to defeat that behemoth, like dropping the cave ceiling on their head while they slumber, and you can win the day without a fight. A good plan or clever thinking won't just save your life, it'll get you paid. And that's the whole point. Your life will be easier, and you'll still get the gold and the XP. If you can just sneak by that behemoth with your pockets full of coins. All right, so I think you get the kind of gist. I mean, this really is, or I presume it's, I don't know if that's what they're designing, but this is kind of OSR by MCDM. Right. So we got some, okay, this is playtest material. This is I think this is June. I don't know if I guess Ian's saying this is the June 2026. So this might even be slightly different than what he ran with. I don't know. We're getting some gods. We didn't have to mess around. Ornasa. No, that's not who it was. There was some backstory we did get just because it actually was integrated into what we were doing with somebody, but that wasn't Ornasa. I don't remember. The name sounds familiar, but I don't remember. It was some. Well, I'll get into it. All right, players in the ref, running the game. So I'll just I think we're getting the kind of the sort of bullet points we'd expect from kind of an OSR type game. Let logic and creativity win. Not every action needs a test. Hint danger. Play the dice where they fall. If it's fun, then it's right. And right. And then as far as playing the game, hey, death is on the table. Enter the dungeon. Think outside your character sheet. There are going to be some hex crawl kind of travel rules. We didn't do them at one point. It looked like we were actually kind of finishing up early, and so there was this idea that maybe we would do the overland stuff, but we ended up not doing. We ended up finding other stuff to do, and part of me was like, oh, I kind of would have liked to see it, but it was good. So the dice, uses D10s, which is for their power roll, right? And they also uses a D100 a couple of times. Always rounding down, creature and object. Okay, characteristics. Yeah, your attributes are 3. You've got agility, mind, and strength. what does it say? No interaction characteristic. You may have played some games where there have been rules that govern and statistics for social interactions between the player character and NPCs. Social interaction isn't a focus of this game. Many of a CROWS foes can't or don't want to be reasoned with. We didn't want to create a lot of social interaction skills and traits that people would take for their characters and then end up not using. When there's a scene of social interaction, that scene can be played out with the adventures and the NPCs talking normally. The ref decides if any persuading, bribes, lies, threats, blackmails, quid pro quo, or other techniques of influence and manipulation would work on the NPC or not, based on the NPC's personality. If the ref really wants the dice to decide if a PC can outwit an NPC, they can call for a mind test. So I don't know, and I guess we'll see if in this I don't think we used a reaction roll in our game, but that'll be made more clear when we get there why we might not have used one so much, if one even exists. Okay, so magic mundane, basically keywords for magical or kind of ordinary. So here we're getting kind of in the meat of it. So tests. When a crow performs a risky task with a reasonable chance of failure, the ref should call for a test. If there is no reasonable chance of failure, e.g. a PC attempts to tie a simple knot with 0 time pressure, the ref shouldn't have the player make a test. If there's no chance of success, the ref should have the player make a test and simply describe the consequences of such an outrageous action. If it's the kind of task that would definitely result in a PC's death, the ref should first ask the player if they're sure they want to try something that would spell their demise before they undertake the task. The ref should make it clear the task will 100% result in bad-ish happening. If the player still wants to do it, that's on them. And then in bold, clever actions taken to overcome obstacles don't require a test, they just work. Okay, making a test. When the ref decides a test is in order, the player rolls 2d10 and adds one of their crow's characteristics that the ref deems applies to the task. If the PC attempts to sneak by a distracted monster, the test uses agility. If they try to determine the name of a magic glyph, the test uses mind. If they attempt to lift an iron portcullis, the test uses strength, right? So this stuff is all pretty obvious. If the rules call for a test and present multiple characteristics to choose from, the creature making the test chooses which to use. And then we're going to get a list of skills. So we had, I think on our character sheets, which I took a picture of and shared somewhere, and here's some aqua fresca Jamaica for the working man. We only had maybe one skill on our sheets. So it was pretty much, I think mine was not mind. What was mine? Conjuring? Was that my skill? No, hold on. Maybe it was, mine was magic lore. Maybe I had more than one skill. No, I think I just had the one. I don't know. But it seemed like everybody kind of had a marquee skill. And I don't know if that was I don't know if that's just how classes work or if it was for these kind of simpler like playtest classes. I don't know. Anyway, the kind of skills you get, alchemy, blacksmithing, climbing, enchanting, endurance, gymnastics, handle animal, hide, historical lore, jump, lift, magic lore, monster lore, nature lore, navigate, pick a lock, religious lore, sabotage, stealth, or search rather, sleight of hand, sneak, and swim. So you kind of get the gist. But at least our character sheets, I will say, were not lined up where we had all of these. We had, I think maybe only the ones that we had listed might have been the ones that we had some kind of bonus in, and the rest of them presumably, because they're affecting your roll. So regardless of whatever you're doing, you're rolling that 2d10. If you have a skill in something, you can add a plus whatever to that. So it was just a matter of if we got the bonus or not. And I think because this is kind of an odd-like type game, at least that was how it. I mean, when we read the original, I guess, summary of what it was going to be, they mentioned a lot of their influences, which was a lot of kind of odd-like stuff, or at least odd-likes were a lot of that. And I think it's taking up part of that odd-like thing of you pick up stuff, you can pretty much use whatever you pick up, and then some people are just better at it than others. So I was a conjurer, and if somebody else wanted to take my spell book and cast, they could try. They just wouldn't be as good as me because they're not a conjurer, but they still could do it. And if you like that style, this is going to slot in there nicely with that. So I had conjuration. So I played a conjurer, so I had conjuration. So you have some spell casting skills: alteration, benefaction, conjuration, elemental, illusion, and necromancy. And then some weapon skills: bashing, bow, chopping, slashing, stabbing, and unarmed. One of the guys had unarmed, and it was cool. He definitely felt very capable just going fisticuffs on stuff. So we get some circumstantial modifiers. I don't know if we need to go too far into that. And then we have basically the tier system that Draw Steel has, but in this case, that the lowest tier is a fail. Which, and I don't know in skills in Draw Steel, but in combat, how part of the Draw Steel thing is you never miss. So you have tier 1 is your lowest result, which is still going to do some kind of damage. And then you have tier 2 and tier 3. In CROWS, in combat at least, I think in everything really, tier 1 is pretty much a fail. Maybe there's some circumstances where it's not a fail, but it's kind of a fail, and then the effects go up from there. So for the test results, right, basically you have to beat 11. If you roll 11 or lower, that's a tier 1, 12 to 16 is tier 2, and 17 or higher, it's a tier 3, which I don't know if those numbers exactly match up to Draw Steel. Someone who's more of a Draw Steel person can tell me. But in my brain, I think I think that's kind of just standard. But again, I don't. My Draw Steel knowledge is extraordinarily limited. And then you do have basically their crit success and crit fail. Crit successes are called crits. Crit fails are called dooms. 19 and 20 are good. 1 or 2 or 3 are bad. Let me see. So we can assist people, which we should have done more of, but we we didn't do. But you see roll, and depending on what tier result you get more or less. I mean, it could actually, if you roll the tier 1, it actually made it harder. Everything else you get a little extra attacks. So castings is the same thing. You're rolling a check against those tier results. For example, for me, being the conjurer, when I had my conjure, your spells are in those books, which I think is something that like Karen uses, and that's probably, I don't know if that's on all the odd likes, but I think maybe it is, where you can just equip something, right? So each spell is basically a book. So you have the book in hand, and then you use the book, and that casts a spell, and so you just and then you make kind of your roll, right? So I had the conjuration book. I'm +1 or 2. In conjuration on me, I was just +1, but I also had +1 in mine, so that ended up being +2. You roll to kind of cast a spell. Pretty easy peasy. They do have an extra bit. I'm assuming it's in here with this kind of chaos system, which was kind of interesting, and we had some. It ended up being fun. Resisted rolls are your saves essentially, and the way they did that I thought was pretty clever. So at one point in the game, I got they didn't call it a wand of lightning bolts. Or not like a fireball, wand of fireballs, but that's what it was. It was a wand of fireballs. And essentially, when you look at the card, and he just made very simple, just paper printout cards for equipment. But on the card, when you have the wand of fireballs, I don't have to roll to use it. But anybody who's in range of it rolls that resistance roll. And on the card, what it shows you is essentially, it's like you took the tiers and flipped them, so that the best result is on the tier 1 for the victim, right? So if they roll tier 1 and fail, that's your best result, which I think was, I want to say it was 10 damage. You look at the paper and say fireball, and it would say RR, and it's a tier 1 10, tier 2 5, tier 3 0, and that is basically showing what your opponents will get. And the one neat thing about that, which I guess in general with the kind of static damage, is you really see, you're not, for good or for ill, and I think different people are going to take this different ways, the damage you're going to do. So you can look at it and immediately see like, oh, if these guys have high agility, it's likely maybe not to do as much damage as I might hope. But if they're sluggish, maybe it's going to be it. Ian has found it. Yes, the boom wand. Yep, that is the boom wand is a wand of fireball. Absolutely. I had a lot of fun with the boom wand, which I will get into. But it's a neat way of communicating that information, and I think it is kind of neat. Hey, look, I love rolling dice, but it is also kind of like, okay, if I hit this, I get 10, then it's 5, then 0, and you kind of see. It's almost like getting like, here's my medium. This is going to be sort of my average. It's going to be here, and you kind of can see exactly that. And again, I think some people will groove with that, and other people will be like, I like the fluctuations, but the highs and the lows of rolling that stuff, the damage, and so forth. Hide and sneaking. I don't think I'm going to read that. I don't think we did too much sneaking. Inventory slots. I think it's going to be familiar again, kind of odd like. And when you have your slots, and essentially if you have stuff in your back, so you have belt slots and backpack slots. If you have something on your belt, you can swap it, I think, uses an action, in terms of if you're in combat, right? If you're not in combat, you can do whatever. But if you're in combat and you want to swap something, you could swap something easily from your belt to your hand. And I don't know if they'll change this. This is something that it's either going to drive you crazy or you'll just figure it out. It didn't bother me and I wouldn't care that much about it. But for instance, I was swapping like books, I guess maybe, but look, I'll just say I'm a conjurer. So maybe I've got some kind of special belt rigging where I've got a little loop I can stick my book into and pull it out, whatever. You can come up with everything you need. They're not concerned super much. I don't think on what you can put in your belt. I don't think it could be insane. Like I've got a grand piano, stick it in my belt. Like, no, but I don't think they're too concerned with most things. You just figure out, well, you must have some way you stick it in your belt. Maybe I got a book, the books are in some kind of leather thing and they've got a little hook on them and I hook them into a loop on my belt, whatever. Got a little carabiner action going. I don't know. So there's that. If it's in your backpack, you've got a bunch of slots. I don't remember how many. I don't have my character sheet here, unfortunately, but you have a number of those slots, and two things happen with those equipment slots, or sorry, the backpack slots. One, they're numbered. It might be to 10. So if you have a slot or an item that's sitting in slot 6, let's say, and you want to get it out of your backpack, it's like I want to take my turn to get something out of backpack. You have to roll a 10-sided die and roll a 6 or higher. And I know it's not the first rules that have used that. It's still, I think it's a clever thing. I still think that if you're digging stuff out of your backpack in the middle of combat, you're doing something like, to me, I just feel like that's not a combat situation thing, but I think I'm in the minority there. But everyone's got like, oh, I just pull it out of my backpack. Well, now it's like, no, you're just kind of digging in a blind hand almost. And it's like you get lucky and you kind of feel it and you go, oh, I got it, or you don't. So you obviously want the stuff that's most important. You want to actually structure your backpack so the things you want to be, on the top or at the ready or on those really low numbers so that you're going to be able to get it out. Whereas if you have it on item 9, good luck. The other thing that happens is if you get hit, at first you've got you got whatever armor you're wearing, and then you've got your stamina, that's basically your hit points, and then you start picking up what they call wounds in your inventory, and they start to fill up your inventory. And it doesn't destroy your slots. If you have something in your inventory spot and you take a wound there, it doesn't get rid of the item. You can still carry it, but there are penalties, I think, to your movement with the more slots that are consumed by wounds. And this was something that I don't know. He might have just been being kind. I don't know that. I don't know that he made, because there was one of the guys, the pugilist, the unarmed fighter. He was hitting with a lot of wounds, and now we weren't having to run away or stuff. And I think a lot of times when we were moving, we were sort of out of initiative, so the movement didn't matter. But I'm pretty sure he never reduced his movement down. So you're kind of supposed to be losing. I think you're kind of losing movement as you go. Which you think about it, and conceptually, in the fiction, it's like, yeah, I'm getting hurt. I can't carry all the stuff, or if I can't carry it, it's slowing down. Ian says that 2 belt slots and 10 backpack slots actually seem restrictive. The only reason I'm satisfied with the tiny inventories of mouse ritter is because they're mice. Yeah, I don't know. We ended up, so one of the things he did do, and he had us cross out on our on our sheets, was he did give us a 3rd belt spot. So you've got your 2 hands, 3 belt spots, 10 backpack items. And, you have your coin in a pouch. Your coin pouch is also an item. And some things, this is another clever thing to do, I think. And I don't know if they're the first ones to do this, whatever, but they use something called stacking. So some items had a stack number. Most things were stack 1, but say torches, I think were stack 5, or maybe they weren't. I don't know. Rations, I think were stack 5, which meant that you could stack 5 rations on top of each other to be 1 slot. So for smaller things, you could have a stack number that gives you a little bit of leeway. I don't know. We never we never maxed out our inventory, but I think, so I don't know if I felt like, I guess in this playthrough, I didn't find the inventory to be too much. I did, you do have to do some maneuvering around, and I felt like one of the things is, as a spellcaster, you don't have your spells memorized. I mean, okay, there's a couple things, right? There's no memorization, which you think, yay, I don't have to pick my spells. But you can only cast with the books that are in your hands. So if you have, and I ended up having 4 casting things. I ended up with that boomstick, a necromancy spellbook, and my 2 conjuring spellbooks, and which meant that while I had access to a bunch of spells, 1 through the wand and 3 through books, I could only have 2 available to me at any one time. And I was having to spend time like, should I? And part of it is kind of a fun problem. I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm like, oh, I got to balance. Like, well, what I want to carry? Like, oh, I'm gonna put this in my backpack. I ended up using my belt slots. All right, I'm gonna put this in my belt slots. But still, if I'm in combat, and I'm like, I can't use that one right now. Like, oh, we're in, there's all kinds of hell's breaking loose. But if I unleash that wand of fireballs, I'm gonna blow everybody up. Like, okay, I'd rather have this other one, but I put that one in my belt. It's not in my hand. So it's going to be interesting. And I do wonder at higher levels, if you're a magic user, and I don't know in Karen, and this is just me, like, this is not a thing that's is unique to this system. I think in Karen and a lot of systems, you just have to deal with it. I'm sure the answer is, well, you have access to, I don't even know if you have access to better spells. I don't even know, does Karen even have levels? I guess they're kind of the more levelless games. Who cares? Because anybody, you can just do it. But I think this one does have levels eventually, unless I'm misremembering. But anyway, it's kind of like, well, you're always going to be limited in some ways. In any given round, you're always limited to having basically those 2 things. If you've got 2 books, you can cast 2 spells potentially, but you're going to have to kind of swap them in and out. It's going to be a thing. But I didn't think it was a bad amount. But again, we were playing a one shot, so in a more extended session or extended sessions, would we find it restrictive? Maybe, but then I could also say, well, that's why you're bringing hirelings along and animals, things like that, to offload inventory too. Okay. So the item cards. So you had cards for things like Mouse Ridder's other games cards. These are just, he literally printed these out at home and he cut them out, But it worked fine, and I actually I really like playing in person, having a little tactile thing. So having your sheet. So you had your inventory sheet, is basically a letter-sized paper, and you're kind of putting your stuff along there and moving it around. I thought worked well. I like that stuff. I think it's fun to kind of, in a sense, board gameize the game in that kind of way. Armor, I didn't have any armor, but you could choose armor, which just, it takes up some damage until it's kind of used up, and then you have to repair it over a short rest, essentially, to get it back. You can have items in either hand. Eventually, you go through your stamina, first you go through your armor, you go through your stamina, and then you get wounds, and then I forget what happens when you get wounded. Ian gets having the ceiling fan on. Is your ceiling fan dangerous to yourself and others, Ian? Okay. Stamina, yeah, so we have that. Wounds, okay, got that. Yeah, you have conditions. The conditions, we didn't ever get blessed. We got boned a few times. Basically, they're penalties to hit, and they kind of cross out. So blessed gives you bonuses, positive ones, boned, negative ones. You kind of obviously don't want to get boned. And it sounds funny too. You're boned. And you could be extra. Was it extra boned? There was another like double boned or something. You're double boned. I had to end up with a spell that was double boning. if I got the tier 3, it was kind of a double bone effect. Let's see. You can grab folks. You can go prone. You can go unconscious. I don't think any of us went unconscious, so I can't really speak to it. Usage dice. So my boomstick had a usage die. The torches use usage dice. So basically, they are using a dungeon turn concept. I think theirs are half hour long, and then everything kind of resets on the dungeon turn. So which I would, so these turns, right? Shadow Darks, is an hour long. These are half an hour. They correspond less to a single turn if you're listening to classic, right? Than that hour, So obviously they're real time. So you're not going to have a set number, but you have to imagine that these kind of effects are what you would expect, like after an hour, like the kind of an hour, right? So the kind of bone, blessed, a lot of things will, status effects, positive, negative, will kind of expire at the end of the that dungeon turn. And now, of course, because it's real time, and I think this is one of those things you're either going to like or you're going to go like, that's annoying, is if it's really low on, imagine you're in combat and the dungeon turn goes off. Like, maybe I just I double boned the big bad, and then the dungeon turn flips. Well, he's not double boned anymore. And it is what it is, right? I think that happened to us. Not in the middle of combat. It happened once where it was like we'd done something, it did it, and then it kind of got not undone, but then and it was like the dungeon turn ended. But that's kind of the fun or not fun, depending on how you look at it, of the real time turn, is that things can pop off at different times, right? So here's the dungeon turns. I'll just read what they say about it. Dungeon exploration occurs when the PCs explore a ruin, fortress, cave, or other location, room by room. The rules generally refer to these locations as dungeons. When the PCs enter a dungeon, the first dungeon turn begins. Each dungeon turn is 30 minutes of real-world time. The ref should track this time on their phone or some other timer and share the clock with the players. The timer shouldn't be stopped unless the group takes a break from play. At the end of a dungeon turn, the PCs roll UD. What's UD? Usage dice for items or effects, and the ref should roll for an encounter. So you're not, the random encounters, right? This is going to have a different flow. I don't know if Shadow Darks, someone will have to tell me if Shadow Darks random encounters are also tied to their timer or if it's done differently. So you're not going to get as many encounters on average, I guess, depending on how fast or slow you're playing. I thought this was very cool. I don't have it written down, but he said at the beginning of the session, the God of Greed, what does he say? The God of Greed rewards rashness or something, which is great. And basically just that you get more, you get this, basically there's a bonus. I think it's really clever. There's a bonus. I don't know if to experience or to loot or how it works, but there's a bonus to, here it is. So you see on the page here, if whatever you find on the first dungeon turn, and then where, so the first turn is a 15% bonus, then 10% bonus on the second turn, and a third turn it's 5%. It's just, what I love about it is it's just encouraging you to get in there and get going, right? So in a lot of games, it can turn out, especially at the beginning, sometimes all the way through, but a lot of times at the beginning, as I rearrange my seat here for a second. A lot of times in the beginning, people want to play it really slow, and look, I will admit, I'm usually, I want to take it carefully. So this is just a little thing saying, hey, look, fortune favors the bold, or in this case, greed favors the rash. If you want to just go for the gusto, you're going to get more out of it, right? And I just think that's fun. I think it's for a game, which I think this is really a dungeon. I think this game is really the emphasis on the dungeon crawling. It's on this kind of loot thing, that putting this thing in there saying, hey, if you can get some stuff in that first half hour, you're going to get more out of it. And it's not because of anything. And I like the way he described it in our game was that this is like the God of Greed is doing it. So yeah, it's this meta thing but it also is like that this is God that's watching you saying, all right, you're in the dungeon. I'm starting my clock. If you can get some gold in 30 minutes or less, I'll give you, I'll hit you up. And I thought that was fun. Oh, Ian asked what happens to the wand if the usage die runs out. And yes, I believe, and I don't know if it's just for that wand or maybe it's all wands. Yes, those are kind of, so from my understanding, the boomstick, those wands, things like that are essentially one use. I got more than one use out of it, but essentially it's one, yes, they have kind of one usage, however you could stretch it. So you might get lucky and get a bunch of usages out of it, but essentially when that usage die fails, yeah, it's trash. I mean, presumably if you wanted to, you could have in, your game some way to recharge it or whatnot. I don't know what's, how they mean to. But yeah, it's done. It's done. So we have dungeon encounters, the end of each dungeon turn. I'm not going to really get into the mechanics too much. They're going to roll a d6. Resting, we did some resting. I think you roll for another encounter, and I think it might depend, or if he was doing it. Yeah, so if you're in the dungeon, they're going to use dungeon encounters. If you're outside, you can use travel encounters. You can do rest activities, which I thought was good. Like, I'm not, if you're in here, you follow my videos and all, I'm not big on the crafting and stuff, but I think their application of stuff was good. So when you're resting, you can do an activity. The activity can be helping somebody heal, trying to do a kind of a first aid thing. It can be repairing your armor. There's some items. This is a really cool thing too. There's an item. Somebody found it. I think it was one of the guys found it. It was other players. It was a book. And the book gave you a bonus to monster lore if you studied it during your rest activity. I thought that was great. I think that was cool. Like, often you get, and that's something I probably will borrow or steal. Thanks, James. You find one of these books, right? And oftentimes in the book, it's just like, okay, you get some piece of lore, right? All right. So what I like about it is, one, it's setting, like, here's how, if you want to unlock whatever's in the thing, you need to spend, because there are only so many, you're only getting, you can do one thing during the rest. So if you're doing that, you're not repairing your armor, you're not doing something else. And so you've got to kind of figure out, what are my priorities? Is it better? Do we, me, I actually was, part of this was because I was trying to stay out of the mix as much as possible. I was basically unharmed. So on one of the rests, when the other two needed to do other things like repair their armor and whatnot, I was like, oh, can I borrow your book? And I read the book, and then later on I was able to make this monster lore check, and I got a little bonus to it. So I was like, oh, great, use that. It's cool. Like, I think you could potentially craft items if you had all the stuff to craft. I don't know how wild and crazy you can get with the crafting, but it seems like that has its own section, so presumably they're going to lean into it. But I would certainly see doing some, I'm just thinking for how I would use it myself. I thought it was good. If you want to have some small kind of things, if you want to have some repairs, but I really like the idea of, hey, you've gotten something and you want to study it. You could study it, but you have to study that kind of at rest, right? You have to kind of rest somewhere and study, which means that it gives you another reason to find somewhere to rest. Find a spot where, like, man, we need to take a breather, and that'd be good because I'd like to study this book or study these runes or do whatever. I thought that was a really cool use, and I'm gonna definitely look at doing something with that. And maybe it's been in a billion things, but I hadn't seen before, so it was new to me, and so that was cool. Do I know how long the bonus lasts? It might say, I don't remember. It might have been. So, okay, so according to this, it says prepare for task. Oh yeah, this is another one. I thought was good too. Prepare for task. This is not what I was doing, it's something else, but someone else did this and it was good. And this might be the same as the one that I did. Essentially, when you finish the rest, you get a +2 bonus on tests on tests until the next rest. So from rest to rest. So prepare for task I thought was cool, because basically it's like you've gone in. So for an example might be, you've scoped out this manor house, right? Okay, we're going to sneak into this manor house. All right, great. So we scope it out. Okay, maybe we get into a little mix, whatever. Then we back away, we're going to take a rest and say, okay, now we've gotten the lay of the land. We know we're going to need to do certain things. Well, we're going to need to, I don't know, pick some, it's, right, you might imagine these things are happening. Well, let's just say, like, oh my gosh, there's this monster chest in there with some kind of crazy lock. We think that we can pick it, but man, it's going to be tough. So we're going to go back and rest. But now if I'm playing the sort of thief-like character, I can say, you know what? I'm going to spend my rest activity, because maybe I'm not hurt or I don't need to do anything else, preparing to pick the lock of that chest. Now I spend my time doing that. Great. So now we go back to that chest, and it's like I've prepped for it. Maybe I did a little study. Like, hey, I thought about it. I got out my tools, made sure everything. I did a little mental. I'm going to walk through it. I think that's really cool. I think it's cool. And that we actually used that. One of the other players used that prepare for task for something. I don't recall what though. But I think that's a neat thing. All right. So then we have light. I think he might have been kind with the light. Not that he wasn't running it But he let us do things like put the light on the floor and it didn't just go out. I don't even think he made us roll to see if it would go out, which I thought was nice. He also did not, maybe because we were just playing playtest wise, we didn't really get into bright versus dim light. And I don't know if that's just the nature of where we were or how that worked. Darkness, you take a big penalty. We stayed out of the darkness. So we were pretty, we were good about that. So we have some rules for falling, for starvation, which again are not things that we had to deal with. Suffocation, we have to deal with. Line of effect. I remember I asked him if I could teleport through walls. I wanted to know. I was thinking I might have to make an escape because one of my spell books is basically a teleport. Teleport self. My spells as conjurer were essentially either teleporting small things to me. I could actually conjure something, make something small that lasts for a little while, and I could also teleport myself. And did I use any of those? I did use the teleport something to me at one point. I was looking for when I might need to use that teleport myself. I think I might have used it once and blipped over, but at one point I was wondering, like, if I have to teleport through a wall, because after exploring, I knew it was on the other side of a wall. I wonder, like, could I teleport there? He's like, no, you have to have line of effect. I was like, okay, good. Cover, we got cover, concealment, invisibility. Okay, into combat. We didn't fight anything that was anything. Everything we were fighting is basically. I know there was one large. I mean, there's two large critters. We didn't really fight too much. Everything's on the grid, which is fine. He had, he was using a pretty simple grid. It wasn't the classic. It wasn't the classic like Chessex off-white kind of grid. It was. I actually would have liked the Chessex one a little bit better, only because. So he had, I guess, a laminated board, fold-up board, so it was a stiff board that had basically like a dungeon tile sort of floor printed on it. And it was fun. And I mean, on its own, I think if you're using it with like wall pieces and minis, it would have looked cool. But when you're using these, dry erase or wet erase, whatever markers on them, so, especially with some of the colors, it just wasn't as, it didn't cause us too much problem, but they weren't as, you just didn't have the contrast. Like what I like on just the plain Chessex mats, right? It's just as high you could draw and it really shows up. This, it didn't show quite so well, but a little bit prettier in terms of the, patterning. But you just drew everything out. We pretty much were doing everything in the grid. He would just draw out as we were entering the places, and he would draw. So we played the whole thing essentially on the grid. We didn't need to, and I don't necessarily think that if you're playing this, you have to, but I think it's following the kind of draw steel thing of everything's in squares, right? You look at that when, the boomstick that Ian posted the stats for, a couple things are on the chat, right? 5 squares. Everything's pretty much counted in squares. So if you are going to play in the grid, you're going to have to mentally turn those squares back into those 5 feet steps, essentially. But it is that 5 foot, right? Which you've been used to if you've been playing since, I don't know, 3rd edition or whatever they went to the kind of 5 foot squares. That's all that is. Squeezing. So you got rules for squeezing, rules for reach. We didn't have to use them too much, so I can't really comment on those. Did we? I don't think we ever got surprised. You basically roll every turn to see who comes first. It's really a very simple roll. It's the party. It's basically side initiative. You're going to roll. If you roll 5 or more, if 5 or lower, I guess it says right here. All right. If the result's 6 or higher, the PCs and allies go first. If it's 5 or lower, the enemies go first. And it's fun, right? You do end up in that circumstance, which he pointed out. And it's fine, because, I mean, like regular initiative, you roll it every round's like that it's potential that a monster could go last on one turn, first on the next turn, so they kind of get a double turn. Yeah, it is what it is. It was fine. Maneuvers, you can move, you can take a shift. So there are opportunity attacks in here. So you can move, shift, you can command your pets. We did have a player with a pet. That was fun. You can draw from your pack, you can draw from your belt, like I talked about. You can pick up an item, you can stand up, you can grab somebody. And then I think, then we go making attacks. I mentioned tier 1. So if you're coming at this from draw steel, tier 1 is no longer a weak hit, it's a miss. And then on tier 1, so not only is it a miss, it's a miss, and then you get countered. Someone can counter you. So this is an interesting bit. And this is a little bit, so, in some of the odd likes, or maybe some, I guess it's an odd like feature, right? The no attack roll, right? So you're in combat, you're doing it, you're things are hitting you because you're there, sort of thing, right? And draw steal has that same thing. Okay. In this game, if you're in the mix and you miss or you make that, is it just on you miss? Let me see. I'll just read it. When you get a tier 1 result, that's the worst result, right? You deal no damage or other effects to your target, and there's another potential consequence, depending on if the attack was melee or ranged. A tier 1 result on an attack is called a miss. A tier 2 or 3 attack is a hit. Thrown weapons like daggers allow you to make melee or range attack when you make... Okay, that's not actually the part. It's the... Where is the miss? Oh, here, maybe it's under reactions. Oh, it's cure counters. So you have reactions. Every round, each creature has one reaction they can use at any point on their turn or another creature's turn. Each reaction has a trigger and can only occur when that trigger happens. A reaction always happens after the triggering event resolves. There are 2 common reactions, counters and opportunity attacks, available to all creatures. Some equipment or traits give a creature access to other reactions. So basically, you're right. Kind of, you get a reaction, you get one of them, you can spend it on a couple things. So the one that kind of was coming up for us the most was countering. When a creature or object within reach of a melee weapon you are currently wielding makes a melee attack against you, uses the grab or knockback maneuver while targeting you, or attempts to escape being grabbed by you within the escape grab maneuver and gets a tier 1, you can use your reaction to counter. If you do, you deal the tier 2 result of the weapon you're wielding to the triggering creature or object. If the triggering test result was doom, you deal the tier 3 instead. So that's kind of a big deal. So you're in combat. It's not odd like in the sense that you're always hitting, but if you miss, you're getting whacked. So it's an interesting dynamic that's at play, because I feel like in the odd like system, you're favoring the attacker, I guess. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I don't know. This in a way, you could say is almost the defender's getting some juice, especially if you're not good at your weapon. Because remember, you have to beat you have to get 12. So if we do the math, your power roll is a 2d10. The average of 2d10 is 11. So if you're fighting somebody with a weapon or something you don't have a bonus on, the average is a miss. Right? All things put aside, average is a miss. If you have a strength modifier, you have some things you're gonna push the odds in your favor, but otherwise it's a miss. And then you're gonna get hammered on the return side. So you do end up getting a lot of back and forth. I think it does bring in a little bit of that odd like where there's not a lot of stasis. So I guess the thing it does is you're getting that chance of failure, which I think for these games kind of works. I'm not anti that not hitting, but I think that tension of missing is the thing. But now there's this other element of like you're missing and you're getting whacked, and you might get whacked twice, but you also might get to, it's like, so here now we look at the range of options on a given melee between two combatants, right? Combatant 1 misses, they're going to take a hit from combatant 2, but then combatant 2 tries to hit them. Combatant 2 misses, then combatant 1 ends up getting a hit on them. So it really is like you're getting kind of this back and forth. You're still getting pretty much either someone's going to go on a positive kind of rampage, if you will, where they're not getting hit, and so they're doing damage on defensively and then doing damage offensively. So you can easily have somebody over a couple of rounds get 4 hits in because they hit twice, the opponent missed twice, so bam, 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 bam. Right? On the same time, if you get unlucky and you miss, you're getting whacked. But it can only happen, you can only use your reaction once. So you can't, if you're surrounded by 3 or 4 guys and they're all attacking you, you may get to counter 1, but then the other ones basically get free hits on you. There's probably a lot of ways to go in there. It's a interesting way of doing it. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't mind, but I'll say this too, though. Reading through that I did not want to get into melee. Like, I was like, I am not getting into melee unless I have they're like, hey, why don't you come over and stab this thing? I'm like, nope, I shall be back here because I am not going to get whacked for trying to attack stuff. Ian says, really takes away I don't have anything better to do, I guess I'll attack. Yes. So I think what it does is I get yes and no, right? And this is where I don't know if I'd want to tweak something, but I feel like melee, if you're a melee combatant, you are put at kind of a disadvantage versus a ranged weapon attacker. Now, you might say, like, well, yeah, that's the whole deal, right? You want to keep them at range, so then you don't get whacked like that. Like, that's the entire point of it. And sure, that is true. But I also feel like, man, I almost want to give them a little bit extra because there's no way now you're not taking a licking. I don't know. But yes, you're not just going to run up into melee because you got nothing better to do, because you're just going to eat damage. Or maybe, right? You might do damage, but chances are, unless you are a combatant, unless that's your shtick, right? You're a fighter warrior type, in which case you want to be there. You probably don't. You want to be thinking of something else to do. Now, that might mean, though, you might not do anything. I mean, I was playing a conjurer. I had a dagger. I had my conjuring books. My conjuring books are not offensive. They're not combat spells. I can teleport myself. Okay, great. I can teleport small items to myself, which situationally super useful. But in just yield combat, unless I want to try to stretch and say, can I grab their, and I didn't try it, but that might have been something. Oh, this guy's got a shield or a sword. Can I cast my spell and teleport their sword to me? I have a feeling that wouldn't work. I probably would be inclined not to let it work, because then it becomes almost too strong. But I don't know. Maybe I'd have to play around. Like, maybe that's what you're supposed to be doing. But there was definitely some time in those comments where I was like, I'm not going to do something because I'm worried about the negative effect of doing that. So it's probably going to be a little bit still bad. Yeah, I'm not just going to join melee because what the heck. But I'm also maybe inclined to stay out of melee because, like, I don't want to take those hits, which to me is fair because I'm playing a conjurer without any armor, anything on. I am not a frontline. I'm not a frontline combatant. Okay. So, and once they say, like, look, it's just enforcing what would be happening in the fiction anyway, which is the scrawny wizard type who's got a spell book in either hand and is wearing, like, not even a robe at this point, but like a loincloth or a tunic. So then, yeah, probably isn't going to go scrape it up with some crazy monster. Like, that's probably an accurate, on the simulation side, that's probably an accurate thing. So, I'll be curious to see how people take it. But I thought it worked well in the game we played. But, you have to, it's one of the things you're going to want to consider as your, in your decision tree, if you will. Opportunity tax. I don't love opportunity tax. They've got opportunity tax. It's fine. They have the shift. So it's one of those things that you can, which I think has been in, again, it's like I think it was in third. It definitely wasn't fourth. And I know it's fifth. The idea if you're in melee with somebody, or you have to go through melee, if you take the shift, which is like the 5-foot step, you don't take an attack of opportunity, but then you can't, you spent one of your maneuvers. So basically, when you're in combat, at least the way James is running it, you kind of can do a maneuver or an action. I think you can also exchange your action for a second maneuver. So you can do a double move by moving as your maneuver and then taking your action and also moving. So if you're in combat with somebody, you can shift, get out of combat, and then do your move and hightail it out of there, but it's not the same as a double move. You can double move, but you got to risk the opportunity attack. I kind of like the free-flowing, like, no opportunity attacks thing, but again, I think we were pretty careful not to we didn't want to eat a bunch of opportunity attacks, so we tended to just figure out ways to either shift or do things to not do that, so that was fine. We didn't have to deal with difficult terrain, but they have it, swimming and climbing. We didn't really have to deal too much, obviously. Flying and jumping, we didn't mess around with much. Teleporting, I think I might have used it once. Pets in combat, one of the players was playing a farmer, which is I didn't get to look at their character sheet, so I don't know exactly what the farmer had on them, but they had a goat pet, and the goat was really fun to have and fairly effective. The goat did die in the end. We did have to sacrifice the goat, which I'll get into. That was funny. But the goat did really, really well. And I guess maybe because James was being nice, I don't know, he didn't have to make really any animal handling skills. Those were more, it's kind of funny because I want to say those were more to do something dangerous, but this goat was, going into combat with stuff. But I think he was saying like it's kind of a trained sort of combat goat. I think I was calling it a battle goat. So, he wasn't making him roll to see if the goat would attack stuff, but the goat could potentially, or your pet can potentially refuse a command at some point. There are some forced movement effects. I think there was, I think something I could do had forced movement, but I never ended up really using it. But it's not like Draw Steel forced movement. It doesn't have, it's not over the top kind of action movie forced movement. Overland travel, we didn't get to. So we didn't see terrain, we didn't deal with weather. But it's here if you want it. So we didn't do any of this stuff. I was going to say if there's a spell casting, because there was something a wrinkle about that. Ian said, I think James did say people had a propensity for having goat animal companions. Yeah, so he had basically pre-gens. And I picked the Conjurer. And then someone picked this kind of unarmed fighter, kind of brawler, boxer type. And then the other guy picked the farmer that had the goat. And like I said, the goat was super useful. All right, so here's what I want to get to. So with magic, they have this thing called magic backlashes. And I'll just read this a little bit. The chaotic sentient force of magic, let's see. The chaotic sentient force of magic doesn't like to be manipulated and lashes out against those who seek to control it when their grasp of a spell is weak. A backlash happens when magic pushes back against the caster intent on harming them. When a backlash occurs, the ref rolls a D100 plus the rank of the triggering spell on the backlashes table to determine the events that take place. Backlashes occur instead of the spell that was meant to trigger them, but the caster still needs to roll the spellbook's usage die. So when your spellbooks, if your usage die goes up, and mine never did, you get those back on a short rest. It becomes another one of those resting activities. But things like, I imagine scrolls, if they exist in this game, and things like the boomstick, they're done. Okay, so your spellbook, if your usage die runs out, you can get them back, but you have to get a rest. If a backlash effect requires the spell have a target that is a creature, and the target of the spell is an object, the spellcaster becomes the target for the purposes of the backlash effect. If the target is suffering from a backlash with a duration, aside from being boned, and gets that same backlash again, that would be unlucky, the ref should roll for a different backlash unless the backlash's effects stack. Usage die for backlash effects are rolled at the end of each dungeon turn. There are two ways a backlash occurs. If a creature gets doom on a casting, a backlash occurs. The second way uses the chaos count. And so we had both of those happen. The chaos count is a secret number the ref maintains during play, and starts at 0. Each time a creature makes a casting from a spellbook and gets a tier 1 result that isn't a doom, the ref rolls d6 plus the spell's rank and adds that result to the chaos count. When the casting causes the chaos count to be 13 or higher, a backlash occurs and the casting count resets to 0. I'm not going to go through because I'll talk about the couple of chaos effects that we got, the backlashes rather. So the one thing, so something interesting here, you may have caught it, and this is the way at least it worked for us, and I liked it, is that that chaos count. So this idea in this CROWS, I think in the setting, that magic is kind of malevolent. It wants to be chaotic. It wants to cause chaos. It's kind of gunning for you in a way. Okay, so every time you cast spells, you're tempting magic to come get you, and that's the chaos count. It's shared. So if I'm the conjurer and you're the summoner and we're both casting spells and we're failing off and on, as you will, right? We're both adding to the chaos count. Now, we as players, we know that chaos count things are happening. He's rolling a die. He's making a note, checking it twice. We don't know, obviously, we don't know, 1, where that number is. 2, we don't know which spell it's going to be. So we have 2 spellcasters. What if then the fighter might pick up a spell book, try to do something goofy, Klaatu, Rada, Nikto, whatever, and and they get the chaos, hits them because they were the ones hit the number. It's a shared thing, which I think is neat. It's like you're playing a little bit of there's a little kind of a Russian roulette sort of thing going on there, where you're definitely tempting fate. You're definitely pushing your luck each time you cast a spell. 1, there's just a chance it fails, but then 2, it's like, it's going to do this thing. And the more spellcasters you have going on, the faster that thing's going to rise up, but you don't know where it is. It reminded me of that DCC Western their Western version had a similar thing where they were using playing cards, and when you're shooting guns and other things, you were doing like this playing card check, but it was all shared. So you have 3 gunslingers firing guns, good and bad things are happening, and it's like you almost want to count cards to try to keep track on what other people are shooting, because that's going to affect you. And the chaos count kind of is a similar deal. I liked it a lot. I think for people who like the wild magic type stuff, it's there. And I kind of like that it's not going to happen every time, and it's not, and you're not going to, you just enter the game, you just start a session. It's not going to hit you right away because they got to get to 13. So even if the GM, referee, whomever rolls a 7, you've probably got, you've got probably 2 spells at least. The worst luck imaginable, it'll be the second spell that you hit if you get 2 7s, right? Because the first 7 gets you to 7, second 6 or 7 gets you to 13. Okay, bad. But you're at least going to get 1 casting where something crazy happens. And of course, even something crazy does happen, and assuming it doesn't kill you, it does reset, so you can kind of go back to casting. I thought it was a neat system. You have to kind of stay on top of it as a referee, obviously, but it wasn't too onerous, and I thought it was fun. Okay, we've got crafting. I'm going to kind of skip through. And we're at the end. All right, so now I might talk a bit about the game. So let me give it kind of in broad strokes. If you were coming at this, let me try to see how to put this. If you're coming at this from the OSR, it's fine. I feel like I'm going to say the thing I said about Shadow Dark. It's fine. I think I had a lot of fun. Okay, which I think I would have a lot of fun playing OSC. Have a lot of fun playing, Shadow Dark. I'd have a lot of fun playing, whatever, AD&D. You can toss out a whole bunch of retro clones and NSR games, all sorts of Cairn, any of the odd, like you're all going to get a good experience based upon how you do. You're being a good player with a good table, with a good GM, all that stuff, right? Does CROWS do something that those other games don't do? No. Okay, you're going to see a lot of stuff that you're going to be familiar with in some way. Oh, it's using cards for your equipment. Other games use cards for your equipment. Okay, it's doing usage dice. Other games use usage dice. Oh, it's doing real-time timers. Other games use real-time, right? It's like all these things, it's bringing them in. I think the thing that if you want to look at and say, well, what is the MCDM spin on it, is going to be that kind of core, that central kind of core mechanic, right? The power roll and the tiered results, because that's something that seems to me pretty much a MCDM thing. If you like the power roll, if you like the tiered results, then you're gonna at a baseline fundamental level, this is gonna be starting you off, right? You're gonna be like, whoop. If for some reason you don't like it, then maybe you don't. I'm agnostic on it. It's fine. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's easy to run. I know that there are a couple times one of the other players had just that there's a little bit of like, you got to kind of turn your mind a little bit, just in terms of not rolling for damage and stuff. But I think there was a couple times where the first time the pugilist brawler guy was getting to combat, and he kept like wanting to like roll the die, like, oh, like damage. Like, that's like, no, you don't have to roll the die. You just check which tier result. And I know at the end of the game, his feedback was, I think it was his feedback, but he was like, he wasn't sure if he loved that part of it. The kind of set, because it's a static number on the tier. So you're rolling to see which tier you get, but that tier is a static number. I don't mind it. I enjoyed it in the One Ring. I'm playing the One Ring, also has static damage, and it's fine. I think, yes, you're not going to get the highs and the lows of, oh, I rolled a D8, I rolled an 8 at, I rolled my two-hander D10 or whatever, and I got the 10, yeah, right? It doesn't have that. It also doesn't have the, I rolled a 1. I do think it's nice just to be able to look and see, like, this is going to do this much damage. Like, if you want to, you look at, you have 2 options for weapons or spells or anything, right? It's very easy to look at your tiered results and consider which one you want. Like at one point, the the brawler guy, I was thinking like, should I pick up this? It was a knife or dagger or something. Should I use this dagger instead of my punching? Right, and sometimes it may be obvious to you if you're like, oh, I know that like 2d4 versus 1d8 or something, like, oh, like you figure out like, oh, if you do it this way, you'll get this much. This way, you get this much. Like if you want the 2d4, if you want that bigger hump in the middle where you're going to get more average. If you want the full range, but you're going to get more variability, you want the 1d8, right? But a lot of people, you know what? Just tell me. And this is looking at, oh, this one does. If I use my fisticuffs, I'm going to do 5 damage. If I use the knife, I'm going to get 3 damage. It's great. Fisticuffs are better. I don't think it's going to make or break anything. I think it probably does save a little bit of time on that, because you just roll, you check your tier, and you go, right? Is it going to change the way things work? No, it's not. But to me, as someone who's like, it's fine, it certainly didn't make it worse. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Like I got, I was used to it within, like, oh yeah, okay. I know the power. Like, I'd seen some draw steal stuff. Okay. Power roll. Great. Tiered results. Great. Easy to teach. It does kind of work for everything. So, your items I was mentioning, oh, I got the boomstick, which flips it for the saving throw, but I can still see, oh, the tiers. I've got something else. Oh, it's got tiers, right? I got it. It's like, it's easy to get a grip on and use. It's not going to change anything. It's not revolutionary. It's not anything. But if you like that, then here you're seeing kind of an OSR framework with that at its core, as opposed to a D20 roll, as opposed to doing a D6 or some kind of dice pool or something else. You got the power roll kind of at the center of it, which is great. So I'm not trying to kind of, I guess, ultimately saying, I'm not trying to damn it with faint praise, saying like, it's fine. No, it's fine. Like, I had a really good time. I could see running this game. I could see playing this game. Would I don't know that I would, for me, is it like, is this going to supplant all these other games at this point? No, but for me, it doesn't matter. It's all good. But I think if you're coming from Draw Steel and you were interested in doing kind of OSR-ish games, but like a lot of, at least, I've never run into these people, but the people like, oh, I can't learn anything but the game I know, or I don't want to learn anything. Well, I think this is going to be a good gateway for that, because I think from here, if you're starting with CROWS and you want to play Keep on the Borderlands, I think you can convert it over fairly quickly. I don't think it would be a hard ask to do. Okay, I want to Keep on the Borderlands, literally using that book, but I just need to convert some stats or things over to the system. Like, I think you could do it. I mean, there'd be some work. It's not, I don't know if I could do it on the fly, but I think you could pretty much set it up in a way that, like, I wouldn't want to convert it to Draw Steel. I don't even know what that would look like. I know people do things like Red Hand of Doom and Draw Steel. It's great. I wouldn't want to do it. And it's a totally kind of different feel. But here it's like, well, I like the kind of stuff with Draw Steel, but I want something that's kind of more OSR, just that vibe, that kind of gritty, grounded, whatever. It's like, okay, I know I like the power roll. Great. Here. Now it's like, I want to use some old TSR thing. Great. I probably could convert something from some other kind of NSR, OSR systems fairly easily. Take me a little bit, but I could probably do it. Great. I guess in some ways I think, like, is this going to be the Shadow Dark in a sense for the Draw Steel crowd? So a lot of people say about Shadow Dark is that Shadow Dark was this thing from, you get 5e folks. They're kind of interested in sort of old school or OSR, whatever their vision of that is, but just leaping all the way over there is too far. But Shadow Dark gets this nice middle ground for them, right? And I could see this being the same thing for Draw Steel folks / kind of Matt Colville fans who are like, yeah, I like Draw Steel, I like the stuff. Like, I don't want to go learn ADD, or I don't want to do that. For whatever reason, I don't like Shadow Dark, whatever I want to think of it. But oh, hey, CROWS, right? CROWS is going to get you there. I think if you're coming from the OSR, you might probably look at CROWS like you do at Shadow Dark. I mean, I know lots of folks who are in the OSR who love Shadow Dark. And I think CROWS is different, but it might have similar kind of loves and similar things like, hey, I can get people to play this that, that might not play something else. Like, I'd really like to play OSE, but I think maybe OSE, because it's kind of tied to BX, maybe people, whatever. It's like, oh, I got all these different things, but hey, I can explain the power roll and some of the odd like stuff to them. And it's like, and it's got that, and it's kind of set for that. So like, great, I can kind of move people over there, and I'm fine over there because frankly, it's going to play very similarly to what we're playing. So let me get into the actual scenario. If that makes sense. I feel like I was kind of rambling around a little bit, but basically I think it's a good game. I think it's solid. I don't think it's really trying to, right? Look, this is something James wants to do. This is clearly like his thing. He's using, which I think is a smart from just all kinds of reasons. Hey, you got this core mechanic, you've already got the power roll and the way that works. So let's just leverage that and show how and it's almost like, hey, we can show you how you can use this outside of kind of a draw steel type thing. If you want framework, like, yeah, we're going to put this other framework that's going to feel a lot like an OSR game, but we're still using the power roll framework, which I think is very cool. I think gameplay wise, it played about like the old kind of OSR game. I think if you're coming from an OSR play, you end up playing in CROWS, you're going to feel very comfortable very quickly because all the same kind of, at least the way James is running it, all the same kind of things that are going to serve you well in an OSR game are going to serve you well in CROWS. And you're going to quickly learn the few differences between CROWS and whatever you're used to, and you're going to go. And if CROWS, because of these things, because it's MCDM, because it's got the power, if people, I assume people like that, if whenever people like it, if people play, then that, like, you know, great. But if you have a game you love, is CROWS, if CROWS going to give you something you don't want, or give you not something you don't want, give you something you didn't already have? I don't know. I did like the chaos. The chaos element's good. I'll look at, I'm looking at the playtest. I'm like, there's already, I guess here's my, this is high praise for me. Okay. This is a playtest. How many pages did we read? I don't know. We read it was like 20 pages, 29 pages, maybe. There's a few things that I want to take out of there. I like the rest activities. The chaos count, I think, is good. I like the God of Greed favoring the reckless. So those are three things just off the top of my head. I'm like, those things are gold. I like them. I might twist them. I could even have different. I'm already thinking like, oh man, different gods reward different behavior. Could it, if okay, so the God of Greed wants you to go in fast and he'll give you that 50% bump. But what if you're an actual active follower of the God of Greed? Maybe he'll do it even more. What if you're a different, there's just some really fun things you could do with this system of having a pantheon with these gods that reward different actions, maybe even tied to turns, tied to everything. I just think that's a super fun concept. I like the idea of doing research during if you found a book or something else to study it during the, rest activity. And I the kind of wild magic stuff, I go up and down on wild magic. I think it's fun. I think sometimes it can blow up things in a way that I don't always want, but I think it's fun. I like this one where it doesn't punish your first failure, but it punishes failures over time. I like the fact that it's a shared pool. So you got multiple folks, you're all contributing to the pools. I don't know if 13 is an interesting number. I mean, just because unlucky 13 is a good number, but I almost wonder, I might say for a game like increase the pool slightly if you have more players, just so that it doesn't feel like having two magic users, you're setting off too much chaos. But it's also random, there's a random chance because you roll the die and as players, you don't know what it is. So in the setup that James had, we're CROWS, which we're basically, we're looting for, we're looting places, dungeons and whatever to feed our families and help our village. I think there's going to be, he mentioned it very briefly, but I think in the game, ultimately you're going to be able to improve your village and do stuff through bringing stuff back and, bringing back your gold and loot and treasures and whatnot. But we weren't dealing with that stuff. But anyway, we're there, we're looking for places, we're looking for dungeons we could loot. Well, there is a flying during this whole, and he did talk at the backstory a little bit, which seemed pretty good. There was some kind of there were a bunch of archmages who were doing a little bit of a Forbidden Lands kind of flavor to this. There were these archmages that were in charge. Then, I think 40 years ago or sometime in the past, in the not super distant past, all the archmages, something bad happened. They all skedaddled. And I guess now it's taken a few years, but now things are kind of calming down. Much in the way in Forbidden Lands, you're in an area that's kind of been oppressed by some horrible, evil bad guy, and then they left, and now it's kind of things are lifting, and so you're kind of wandering around. I think there's a similar setup here where it's like, oh, the bad guys have gone, and like everyone's kind of like starting to trade again, and things are sort of getting back. You're starting to put feelers out about things getting a little back to normal. This is the kind of environment you're in. In our case, so for our setup, some noble family who was attached to one of the archmages had bodily lifted their mansion their manor house off the ground. It was floating, and it had been sighted recently, and our group had found it. So we entered this clearing, and there's, the bottom, including like the earth and stuff at the bottom of this floating mansion. Now, the very bottom of the earth, where it's like literally scooped out of the ground, right, is about 10 feet over our heads. But then the top of ground level was 40 feet up. So first order of business was figuring out how to get up there. Now, I think this is a really good opening. Okay, it's following that classic advice. I don't think you always need to do it, but it's not bad to start at the dungeon, right? We didn't start with, we're getting the job, or in the tavern. It's like, no, you're here. And it puts a puzzle right in front, which I think is good for this kind of game. I didn't know who the other people playing with me were, but I was thinking, like, that's a good thing to put a puzzle in front. It's not a hard puzzle. Plenty of ways to do it, but it is putting right out in front of the fact, kind of setting kind of what the game is. The game's going to be kind of puzzly. Not puzzling in the sense of do a Sudoku, but puzzling in the sense of you're going to have to figure stuff out. So we have rope, we have chains, we have all this stuff. There are trees around, whatever. Now we got to kind of put it together, do a little work as a team to get up on this floating island. It's not a combat. It's not something that someone's going to be able to look at their sheet and just say, "Oh, I've got the 40-foot ladder." Like, no, we're going to have to do that thing, right? So we ended up doing a combination of climbing up a tree and getting things across. I think did I end up teleporting across? No, I didn't. The other guy jumped across. I teleported across. I failed, but I didn't get a doom. And then we did other ways. And we ended up being able to hoist the goat up, which was important. And they were in front of this mansion. In the mansion, 2 stories tall, I think. The windows were all shuttered from the inside. It's a closed door. We decided to do, I decided, and then we ended up deciding to do a perimeter walk. We found a graveyard with a mausoleum in the back. We were able to, and there was a couple of, some graves, a mausoleum, an outhouse. The outhouse was outside the graveyard. And then some of the graves were dug up a bit. And I don't think we ever figured out what was going on with the dug up parts. But we ended up getting the mausoleum open and going down into this. So it didn't have a tomb or a sarcophagus or anything inside. Instead, it had a spiral staircase going down. So you go down the spiral staircase, end up in this. It was like a star kind of set of hallways. As we start walking down, and we got our torch lit, there's some kind of schlepping sound. I ended up peeking up around this corner, and there's some horrible creature. He had some really nice illustrations for this that he showed. I don't know if that's the final or, if that's the artwork that's coming to some version of, but they were cool. I mean, MCDM's art is very good, and this is very good. And then, of course, he puts the mini down on there, and it was like some big, nasty-looking creature. I'm ready to nope out of there. But at the far end, so we've got like a hallway coming to a central where it kind of broke off. Sort of the one arm across from us, there's a big chest that's open. You can see there's gold, and there's a couple of vials of something. The pugilist guy, he runs across, grabs the and he's not able to pick up the chest, but he is able to stuff his coin purse full of coins. And I think, did he start to run back? He might have started to run back. The creature thing is getting closer to the middle. I'm backing up. I'm like, yeah, this is fun. But what I did do was I took my chain and I kind of tied it between 2 sconces to hopefully kind of catch the thing if it tried to, because it was big and it was like up to the ceiling. So I'm like, this sconces and maybe like shoulder high. I'm going to put it there and then hopefully it'll kind of bump against it. But I'm heading back. I think James laughed. I think he thought that was funny. I'm like, yeah, I'm heading to the back. Then the farmer had some farmer strength, runs down there. He's able to get I think he scored like a tier 3 or something on his strength. He's able to actually hoist this thing up. He's pulling it back, but now the monster's kind of there. Couple of rounds of combat. It's big. Battle Goat gets into the mix, but we are able to actually get it out. Not unhurt. And in fact, my chain, and I don't know if James is being kind, my chain did end up holding the thing up so that the goat and the folks could get out. So we ended up getting all the way up and out with what turned out to be was the biggest loot pile in this in this one shot in this dungeon, and we got on the first dungeon turn. So we also got the 15% God of Greed bonus. So we lugged that out and we kind of put it off to the side. We made sort of a treasure stash. And I think we take a rest already then? We might have already taken a rest because I think we did take some damage. So we took a rest. Then we came back and we opened up the doors. So there was an entryway from the graveyard, there was an entryway into the house. So we get into the house. We go upstairs. We start digging around. There's some kind of, we used an owlbear type mini, but it wasn't an owlbear. We avoided that one. That guy was stuck in. So I want to give hats off to James. This is something I thought was fun. So at some point someone had chalk. I don't know if we found, I think they had chalk on their sheet. Okay. So we get to a room and there's some undead. So this thing was filled with undead creatures. The thing that was down below was undead. Oh, it also had it was launching some kind of fire beam or some kind of beam out of its stomach that just barely missed. I don't know what would have happened if it would have hit, but it was like down the hallway, but we were already getting up the stairs, so it didn't hit us. This kind of creature was in like a bed frame, but we could see that it couldn't get out because there was some kind of sigil or rune that was carved in the floor. So someone gave me, I think we were starting talking about this sigil, and I was like, and I'm thinking like, I don't know, like I was almost, this is one of those things where I was probably doing myself a disservice by kind of acting as like a little mini GM in my own brain going, you're not going to let me draw the sigil. But he did. He was like, oh yeah, you can repeat the sigil. I was like, yeah, this is like, you're a conjurer. So you do. So we were able to, I ended up using it twice, which I thought was fair because I had this chalk make these chalk sigils that would prevent undead, which was key because everybody in here was undead except for us. So we explored a couple of rooms and we saw that thing in the bed. We were like, left that alone. We knew there was something underneath it. That was the one thing we didn't go back to get. But we were like, oh, okay. But we were picking out other bits of loot. We found some others. We found a necromancy spell book that they gave to me. So then that gave me an actual weapon. So before I had the knife, I had these kind of conjuration spell books, but they couldn't do me much good in battle. And I think it was clear at this point. I mean, it was probably clear to them pretty early that I'm not going to get, if I'm getting into battle, it's because I'm in a room where I can't get out. I'm not, my knife and like, I didn't have any armor. I didn't have much stamina. Like that wasn't going to be a thing. So now I had this necromancy book. So now I was in the back. I could send out these like, I don't know. I don't remember what the description was or even if it gave much of it, but I'm putting those, I'm boning people and I'm doing damage. It was good. So we ended up doing those. We did a couple rooms. We were getting stuff. We were getting some keys. I think we did a really good job of finding secret stuff, which is fine. We ended up in a room with some creature was underneath the bed. We got a book out of that. That's when I got the necromancy book. We ended up getting a key, a ring, the necromancy book, some odds and ends that were just like gold, treasure. There's one book with a bunch of undead guys in it. And they were in a room, so we were able to bottleneck them a bit, but some of them ran down the stairs. So there's his room, and there's like an old spiral staircase in the corner, and we're like, oh no, what's going on? But during that combat is when I got the chaos thing. So I was casting something and it failed, and that was when we hit the number, and on my number, so then James rolled, and I was vomiting slugs. And so this was tough. And this is not tough it was funny, but it really was debilitating. It didn't end up causing me any permanent damage, but this is one of those things where the dungeon turns either going to be very kind to you or potentially very harsh to you, because basically at every round, and I don't know, this was happening in a combat situations. Outside of combat, I don't know what it would have happened. But every round combat, I had to roll a die. If I rolled even, I could act. If I rolled odd, I was vomiting slugs. So I spent a couple of turns in a row, and I'm just vomiting slugs, just blah, blah. And it was funny. At the same time, I think some people are going to say, it's one of those, in a sense, it's kind of a save or suck type situation. I don't necessarily tend to mind those too much, but you have to say, like, okay, it's like you get paralyzed by a ghoul or something, right? And it's like, it is what it is. And, I don't mind, but other people are like, I get the school of thought that, hey, I don't want to spend 10 minutes doing nothing, essentially. Now, this being like an OSR type game, combat goes quickly. I wasn't always caught. You do have a 50-50 chance every round, so it wasn't like I was just stuck doing it. But it is something that, like, you think about and go, well, luckily for us, that was one of the combats where the dungeon turn ended like 2/3 through the combat, so that the effect ended. I was like, oh, but if it had been at the beginning of a dungeon turn, that could have sucked for a long time because there was no save. There was no save to stop. It was just, yeah, you got this effect. You were vomiting slugs. Good luck to you. So maybe you might. I thought I was fine with it, but if you don't like that, that's going to be something you may want to tweak or house rule. Kind of, it is what it is, but hey, you're going to be a spellcaster. It's a dangerous business. So when two of the things ran down the stairs, we almost that was the first time we got into a really kind of bad squeeze because they got some other undead, one of which was kind of like, I think, kind of the big bad. Not really, but she was definitely one of the more powerful undead that was there. Came up from down up, but luckily by the time she got up, the dungeon turn. Oh no, she came outside. So what happened was she came outside. So I was on a balcony because I was on a balcony. She was coming out below the hallway room. This is where all the kind of main combat's happening because I had backed up. And she came out. I used the necromancy book and I bolted her, which made her double boned. And then her and her undead minions were moving up. I was able to get a turn where I could do something, and I came in, and then they came up. The dungeon turn ended, which meant that double boning I had done on her, every time I say that, it's kind of like, ended, but then also did my slug things ended. Then she came in, and that's when I did maybe my best roll, where I think I crit. And James said, like, her head blew up. Like, I was like, oh, so like she went down. By that time, we'd knocked off enough. I think we might have killed the last of the folks inside the room, so we could kind of turn all our attention to the ones outside the room. And we ended up persevering. But that was a close call. But we did it. And then we were just doing kind of cleanup stuff, exploring some other rooms. We ended up going downstairs. There was a book that was on a pedestal. It was locked. There was some like thing, like always like skull things coming down. Of course, it was kind of a trap, and we triggered it, and the thing came down. But that's when at that point I had the boomstick. My first use of the boomstick was boomsticking that thing, which I don't know if it killed it outright, but it did enough to kill it. And a little more cleanup, and then we found kind of the hidden room that had the controls to the not really a hidden room, but locked. But we had found all the keys that got us in. That could control the thing up or down if we wanted to, and as if I said, this is my boom wand. I did not say this is my boom wand. I should have said this is my boomstick, but I didn't. Nope, I didn't go Ash. And then we did some more kind of cleanup stuff and got into the room, and then we kind of came out, and they were like, well, there's the outhouse. So we thought, like, okay, we'll go check out the outhouse, and there was a body down the bottom of, in the poop chute, so to speak. So we brought them out. And the other player had picked up a book. No, it was their ring. The ring that they had that could control the ship had another effect where it could talk to the dead. I think they had something that could talk to the dead. Well, guess what happened? Oh, I'm going to talk to the dead. They rolled a doom. Critic fail. Out comes the chaos thing. And like 6 or 8 undead just pop out and just surround us. And now we're like, I'm looking like and the thing is like now, they had us in a tight cordon. They weren't on all sides, but basically I had undead on both sides of me. And I'm going, man, I spent I had a clean sheet, untouched, undamaged. I was walking out of here. We'd gotten probably 99% of the loot. And I was walking out with all my health and sanity that I walked in with, and now I'm stuck, and I'm like, how am I going to get out of this? So But I got the boomstick. And it happened to be, I didn't notice it at first, but I was standing in the doorway inside. And we're in this area that's like, it is almost the 5x5 square. Not exactly, but we're all in the square. So then one of the guys looks at she and goes, hey, I think I can eat a fireball. And I'm like, for sure. And he's like, and he turns to the other guys, I think you could take a fireball, couldn't you? And the guy's like, I think. And he'd taken a bunch of wounds and stuff. And this is where I think James either kind or just kind of lost track of the wounds and the movement part of it. And they kind of tried to move a little bit, but they couldn't really move because they had to shift and stuff. They couldn't really move. And I was like, and I'm looking like, oh, I can shift back. I can shift back inside the house, inside the doorway, and I can just boomstick the 5x5 square next to me. I can keep my clean sheet. So that's what we did. So I stepped back and unleashed the fireball. They both took some, because I think I rolled, or no, sorry, you had to save versus damage. So, and then it just was lucky. It so happened that these particular undead were not particularly agile, because it would be like kind of like your reflex saves kind of thing for the boomstick. So they took max damage, and they all 6 of them, I think, and just went out. And then the other guys took some damage, but not enough to kill them. And then that was basically the end of the game. So we might have left one piece of loot or something on the table, but we did very well in the loot gathering business. I know James mentioned that some group, half of them died or something because they kept opening doors. I mean, so here's one of the funny things. I would really love to see some of these play tests and things, or just witness, because I think, as often happens, right, you get players who are used to 5e or draw steel or something like that, and now they're coming to this kind of game. And apparently one group came in, they got in trouble, and then they panicked and started opening more doors. And that was just allowing all other creatures into the mix. And they just kept opening them. And then apparently they cast a spell, which they had a similar kind of Bane or the Doom. And they ended up drawing in more of this. They ended up having this whole cluster in this house. Right. But we did a pretty good job, not a perfect job. We did a pretty good job using the kind of classic tactics to address the dungeon. I say pretty good because we weren't particularly, like, we had it. One of the guys had a 10-foot pole, and their character sheet ended up trying to stab something with it and broke. Like, our discipline in terms of traps and things was not good. If there were traps in the floors, we would have gotten us. We weren't good about that. But in terms of checking out rooms, like going room by room, I was closing all the doors behind us, because there were dead things in like one room we go into, which had the big thing that was behind the rune, that kind of sigil or whatever that was keeping it locked in there. There were all these dead things. They were undead creatures, but they were being killed again. They were kind of lying there posed. And I just kept thinking, like, man, when are they going to wake up? I am sure they're going to wake up. It's just a matter of when. They didn't. I don't know if we didn't trigger the thing to do, or just if they were just dead, but they didn't. When we fought that one battle, I also used the second sigil thing, and which also helped bottleneck the undead from coming. And James was very generous with that, which I appreciate. And I think I mentioned it to him, because one, he let me draw them, and I was like, man, I was surprised that you let me kind of just look at those sigils and then draw them. And he's like, oh, you're a wizard type. That's kind of your shtick. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, because a lot of times people wouldn't. They wouldn't do it. They would say, oh, you need to study it, or you need to do whatever. Or like, oh, you don't know the spell or whatever. Like, oh, you just let me do it. And then when I drew the first one I drew we didn't end up using it. It was kind of a waste. But the second one I drew came into effect, and I was thinking, like, oh, it's chalk, it's on the ground. So I thought, oh, the first undead's going to walk into it, will be blocked, but then it's going to muck it all up. It just made sense to me. It's chalk. I just drew it. The undead's going to be like, oh, and then he's going to leave. So it'll be like a one creature kind of effect. But no, we killed him, and the second guy walked up and got him again. So it was just kind of nice. But it was illustrative, I think, of him as a GM, not necessarily the system. The system doesn't stop you, but it's one of those things that's not system dependent anyway, right? It's just a good GM will do things, and things like that kind of help make the game what it is, right? It wasn't a CROWS excelled at this thing. It was, no, James is a really good GM. Do this, and CROWS is not going to be, he's not getting in the way of doing it, right? But that was kind of a thing that he did, which I thought was, Very cool. And just nice and kind of open play. I mean, that's what you want. You want to be able to try things and someone be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You can do that, you know. And he did. Um, the feedback from the other players, one of the other players, I think we were. I mean, I was positive. Like I went through. I'm positive. Like I said, it's. I don't know that it's gonna. I mean, it doesn't have to, right? It doesn't have to change the universe. It is a good game. It is a good game. I like it. I think one of their players didn't love they not they didn't love it, but I think they had to get around the kind of power roll thing. I think maybe the idea of like an OSR game, there's not a, the slips of paper that had our actual character information were like a little clipped piece of paper. You had your stats, you had your name, you had one kind of skill, and I had like a thing like, oh, my trait was like if I'm teleporting things around, I can teleport things a bit further. Like those were kind of like that, and that was it. So, like people think about in OSR, one of the things people always like to go to is like, oh, you're not looking, the answer's not on your sheet. Well, no, the answer's not on your sheet. Now, it might be in your inventory, which is fair, I think, compared to OSR games. A lot of times it's your inventory, kind of what you do with it, but it's not looking for a particular thing to push. And I wonder if the one player hadn't quite gotten around that much, because I didn't ask anybody like, oh, I didn't go around saying, oh, are you familiar with the OSR? Like I didn't do that. So I don't know what their backgrounds were in terms of playing, but I got the sense at least that one player was more of like the 5e type. And so a little bit of a different mindset coming here, like everybody has to do, right? I mean, I would have to spend so long since I played kind of those games. I'd probably have to have a mindset shift if I were to play 2024 D&D. But definitely that kind of like, oh, okay, I got to do this. Or, oh, I'm not going to be rolling for damage. But yeah, the 4 hours or 3 hours and 40 minutes, whatever it was. And we took a couple breaks. Let's call it 3.5 hours, maybe all told. It was fun. Had a great time. I think if you looked at the CROWS stuff and you like this stuff, I think you're going to like it. I don't know. Like I can't, I'm trying to think about, like, I'm not trying to think of things I dislike. I'm just trying to think about, is there anything I would say like, oh yeah, this isn't for you? I mean, obviously if you don't like OSR stuff, if you don't like some of the odd like stuff, then yeah, this probably won't be for you. But if you like that stuff, it's going to be as good. I think it's solid. I mean, it's almost really going to come down to, well, support and community and all that stuff. Because just as a system, it was good. And I really feel like I could run something in this system pretty easily. Like if someone said to me, Todd, next week, can you run a CROWS playtest scenario? Like I think I could. Because I don't think I'd have to change much in my mind philosophically. It would just be, I just got to wrap my brain around the formatting creature stuff, how to write down like, oh, if it's this, like what, like that's it. It's going to be very familiar, I think, feel wise to kind of yield OSR. Now, I don't know in terms of traps how they would work. I guess it probably I'd have a trap, and it would be, I'd use that same like R or that some kind of resistance roll, and that would just have the tiered results. I do kind of like the tiers. I kind of like the tiers in the same way I like kind of mixed successes. And I like that it's kind of mechanically it's there. So that you could say let's say you had a spiked pit trap, right? The worst result would be that, so if you imagine it, you got a spiked pit trap, right? And the spiked pit trap, you might say normally is 1d6 damage, let's say, okay? And then if you're running it and say something like OSE, BX, whatever, you might say, oh, okay, you fall, you didn't roll, whatever, you missed your save, you fall down. All right, we roll for damage, you roll a 6, clearly you hit a spike. You rolled a 1, you would say, oh, you missed all the spikes, but you kind of just, you just banged a little bit as you went down. In a sense, the tiered results kind of give you that same thing. The worst tier result would be like, yeah, you impale yourself on a spike, you take 6 damage. The middle tier results, you take 3 damage, you kind of hit the side of the spear, the side of the spike pit, whatever. And then if you're the higher end, maybe you take no damage as you kind of slide down the side, or you could make it 4 and 2, whatever. You could figure that stuff out. But I think those tiered results are the thing I like about it, I guess, is clever, especially in this way, is that you're taking a save and essentially your saving throw, and you're really just having degradations or gradations of success, but you've just standardized it. So all you can just keep in mind, because once because the numbers don't change. To me, it's like, I like this in the One Ring too, right? The numbers don't change. It's 12 or whatever, 17, I guess the numbers. Whatever, 0 to 11 is tier 1, 12 to 16 is tier 2, 17 plus is tier 3. Once you get those numbers down, then all you have to think about is tier 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. That's it. As the GM, right? And then like, okay, let me just think of 3 different ways. And you could go like, let's say I was converting something from BX. Oh, the max damage this thing could probably do whatever. Now you can, your characters in CROWS, I think similar to kind of odd-like games, they're more powerful than your BX counterparts, right? Your wizard got 1 spell and 2 hit points is way outclassed by somebody who's got these spell books and has, I don't know how much stamina I had, but it was more than 6, I think. It might have been 6 or 7, but then I've got my inventory wounds, and wounds are harder to get rid of, but still, it's kind of a big sort of buffer, much like in something like Cairn or one of those games where you have your hit protection, but then you have your attribute, and your attribute, that just gives you, you don't want to lose attribute points, but it's better than being dead, right? So, but I think you can just kind of do that and it'll be pretty easy. And I like it. And I do like that it builds in like, oh, hey, you're kind of fail, like a mixed success, better success. And then like in Draw Steel, I think if you crit, at least in combat, it's like you do another attack. And other things, I don't know if there's a particular crit effect, but you get that higher result anyway. So it's good. And of course, James was awesome to, play a game with. And he was great to talk to when I caught up with them in the Wawa. So it was a very positive experience. I don't know if anybody wants me to answer any questions. Ask me anything. I played CROWS. But it was fun. It was only the 3 of us. And I think the game played well for 3. I don't know if I don't remember. We were supposed to have 2 more people who didn't show. So we were supposed to play a 5. We ended up playing a 3. I don't know if he changed anything in the adventure. It didn't really feel like it was, but it played fine with 3. I think to Ian's point about the lack of inventory, the battle goat, the goat pet can carry stuff, has a couple slots, so you can stick stuff. You can have your goat carry things if you want. So you do get a little bit of a I guess obviously depending on your pet, but if you have a horse or a goat or something like that, they can also carry for you. So you get some carrying. I don't know if there's going to be hirelings in the game, what the thoughts are on hirelings, but that's another option, is some kind of baggage person to carry some bags for you. We did not. We did. So one of the players, just because they ended up picking up a lot of stuff, did fill their inventory, but then I was taking some of their offload. We were never like totally out of inventory space, but again, we were playing a one shot. And it was kind of a smaller dungeon, if you will. And we also ended up taking stuff out to kind of piling up treasure in sort of a safe spot outside the dungeon. So we weren't trying to carry everything all the time. I only got to play with the spells that I had. The boomstick was fun. It was fireball. The necromancer spell was fun. Did some good damage and you are definitely, as a magic user, using spells in the game definitely gives you kind of an edge, because they don't necessarily, if you have the book, even if your usage die runs out, you can recharge it. Now the boomstick, if it had run out its usage die, it would have been trash, but I think that's fair, because you don't have the high limits on stuff that you do in kind of an OSR, your kind of regular OSR game. Anything else? Anybody else want to ask me something? Is there anything else I can answer for anybody while I'm here? I'm trying to think if there's anything that I'm not thinking of. I'm sure there's something, but nothing's coming to mind exactly. So let me know. Otherwise, I think I can call this a stream. Yeah, there was no art. There was no art for our characters. The art, like I said, the art for the monsters was very cool. The monsters they had really cool looks to them, and they're definitely going to be some gonzos to the monsters. Like I said, one of the monsters had a hole in its stomach, and then it shot out a beam that might have vaporized us, or at least a couple of us, if it had gone that way. Thankfully, it did not. So that was good. Um, it seems like it's a kind of a dark. I mean, this place is definitely dark. There was like a really sort of interesting. my favorite, my new favorite game confirmed. I mean, like I felt not that I felt bad. Like talking about these games, talking about Shadow Dark, it's tough because on the one hand, if someone wants me to say like it's the best game ever, it's like no, but I don't mean that in a bad thing. I just mean that it's a fine game. I would absolutely play it. There's a bunch of fine games that I absolutely play. It's kind of like what is I almost want to think like, well, what is this game for you, or for what is this game, Phil? I think it's definitely going to appeal to a lot of MCDM folk who might like OSR play. I'm always hit their audience. I'm super fascinated by. I wish there's a way I could not study it. But I just love to know the demographics, not really in terms of ages and things like that, but just like what games they play. Because there seems like there's got to be a mix of folks who came from Matt's GM videos, from kind of 5e type games that have fallen into Draw Steel, or come over to Draw Steel. I mean, I've enjoyed Matt's running the game stuff. I like to watch his videos, and I'm definitely not in the 5e camp, kind of thing. I'm not. I played 4e and I enjoyed 4e, but a 4e Mark II 4e recharge, supercharge is not really on my. I mean, I'll play Draw Steel. I would really like to play Draw Steel. I'd like to try it, but it's not. I'm not like aching to run it or anything, right? So I'm not kind of part of that group. So I'm sort of interested in like who their people are and what their experiences are. But I think this is going to appeal to a bunch of folks who like that. I mean, if anything, like if they're following the same patterns, kind of Draw Steel, is going to be kind of good support. It's probably going to be, or I would say excellent kind of support. So that's good. That's one more you ask for. I think it hits a spot where, look, if you got old stuff around, you're going to be able to use it. I don't think it's unfriendly. I mean, I think maybe I should make it a positive way. I think it's friendly to just running games in, but like there's, it's like, there's so many games. Like, I don't want, it's really, it's like, I don't want it's like, how can I differentiate it? Right. I guess that's one of the good and the bad things in that kind of OSR, NSR space. So far as like, well, how do you differentiate between these games? So if I saw Reddit postings and someone said, I don't know what I want to play next, CROWS, Shadow Dark, or, Cairn, or OSE. Like, I wouldn't know what to tell them. Like, to me, it would be all about, well, what have you been playing? And if someone says, well, I've been playing 5th edition, you might say, okay, Shadow Dark. If someone said, well, I really liked Draw Steel, but I want something like, okay, CROWS. I really like, it's like, I mean, I guess it's great because there's just a bunch of good games. And I'm happy that it's a good game because I feel like they are going to support it and it's going to get a lot of talk and stuff. So I'm glad that it's good. I'm glad that it's showing kind of OSR play when I think is a positive light. Obviously, some people are not they're not gonna like the game style and all that stuff. But that stuff aside, they're doing good light, right? So it's really interesting. It's like there's just all these great games, and it's like, well, what makes this one better than that one? It's like, I don't know. Mr. Goat says OSE all the way. I mean, OSE is great too. I mean, it's BX, right? And I love BX. I think, and I've said this before, I think the thing is that these games, and this probably goes further than Shadow Dark does. I know people love various mechanics, a mechanical diversity. I think I know I talked to Daniel Bandiskeep. He loves like all these different mechanical type ways. Oh, you're doing this. A system works the one way and another system works another way. And yeah, it's great because you can really tune a particular mechanic or procedure to fit that system. But it's also this barrier to people coming in and learning it and doing it, right? So yeah, of course you can get a grip on it. I mean, if people are smart, just learn it, you'll get there. But at the same time, I think in settings, particularly like your con games, whatever, like these things, I think new players, I think to be able to say someone like, here is how this mechanic works, and then that's how it works, right? Like, everything you're going to be doing, with maybe an exception or two, is going to be this thing. And, Shadow Dark, I don't remember if they do everything the same way or not. They might still have a couple of systems. OSE definitely has the kind of BX type of systems, which I love. But I've been sitting with it since I was a kid, right? I think if I was teaching it to my wife or somebody, not only the different mechanics, but also the why of it, right? Why is the thief's skill for, why is one thief skill in percentage a D100 and the other one's in a D6? And it's like, I think they wanted more, incremental values, but does it really matter? No, I don't know why they didn't standardize it, right? Whereas you come to a system and it's like, okay, power roll. I get it. I can just use power roll, right? And so if you like the power roll and you like the 2D10s and you like some and whatever, it's like, oh, you got the power roll. Great, it works. And once you learn the power roll, everything's just doing the power roll. Which meant it was easy to teach folks, like, hey, just here's the power roll. Once you learn how the power roll works, you're just going to be doing the power roll. And you can quickly come up to speed. Oh, I rolled 11. Oh, I missed. I rolled a 12. I hit. Oh, I rolled a 17. I hit pretty well. I got that, great. And it's like, you got it. Like I played one session and it's like, oh yeah, power roll. So I hear you on OSE, right? But I think it's not, it's not perfect or not perfect for everybody. And that's kind of I guess that's the great thing. We have this whole bounty of games that are going to be perfect for different people. And that was just great to play the game. And I was like, oh, this is good. Not that I expected CROWS to be bad. I didn't really know what to expect when I sat down. I hadn't read the playtest at the time. I just read they're going like, okay, they're borrowing a bunch of stuff and it's good, right? But it's good. It's good. And James was awesome. I just want to reiterate that and thank him again for running a great game. So, he seems like an excellent steward for this kind of stuff just in general. And I feel like he's going to be an excellent steward for this because I think that I don't want to say he gets it. Like, oh, he gets it. It's like, no, but he, I think he understands, I think, what he's trying to do and doing it, which I think is important, right? It's not like it's not like he's trying to they're trying to cash grab on like the old school revolution sweeping the nation. They're trying to cash in. It's like, no, they're, he's doing this because he wants to do it and he clearly, gets it. But that said, right, is it better than OSE? No, it's just different. It's going to give you some different things. Spellcast is going to work a little differently. You're going to get the different things, but the feel is going to be similar. You're going to be able to figure it out. It is what it is, if you will. But it was a lot of fun, and I would totally play it again. I would totally run it again. I mean, the caveat for me is if I'm running a game right now, it's going to be probably my game or like the One Ring or something. But at the same time, if somebody were like, hey, Todd, we'd like you to run CROWS, I would absolutely run it and have fun running it, right? With my pleasure. I would run it, with pleasure. It would not be something where if somebody told me, hey, you want to run 2024 D&D 5e, I'd be going like, can somebody else run that? I mean, I'll play it, but can somebody else run it? So, it's good. And I'll be excited. I really think a lot of the differentiation, I don't know, differentiation is not the right word. It'll be interesting to see how they build up the setting and stuff, right? Because just in terms of the big differentiator, other than a couple things, it's going to be like the setting. It's going to be the stuff that I skipped over about Cornath and about the different things. And it seems like he's got some interesting stuff with these archmages or whatever that are kind of gone amok time with the archmages. So should be interesting. Anything else before I shut her down? How's everybody's Monday going, by the way? So it's already 10 o'clock. Man, oh man. Man, oh man. I can't tell if they need to do something where I can see like the little, like you see in messaging where it's like somebody's typing. I can't see if anybody's typing. So I don't know if anybody's got anything or not, but I'll give it another minute or so. Yeah, it was fun. Try the playtest. I'd be curious if the playtest, it's hopefully people will, I mean, I guess I'll need to start looking at Reddit. I don't know if there's a CROWS subreddit where I can see where people are running it. I'll be definitely curious to see what their critiques are. The kind of early adopter, I don't know, MCDM insiders. Yeah, it's only Monday. The MCDM insiders and whatnot. Oh, your D&D got canceled? Oh, sorry, Mr. Goats. Was it old school D&D or were you playing 5e or what was your game? Always bummer. My Tuesday One Ring game got canceled. I feel like we're going to get a lot of cancellations We're going to get a lot of cancellations this summer, or as spring becomes summer. I think it's just the way it is. People are getting busy. You know, Tuesdays. You know, we play during the week, so it's kind of Tuesdays, Thursday. You know, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We missed a couple Thursday games, so we did get a Thursday game in. It was kind of a quiet game. There's not a lot of action going on, but you know, we're moving things along. Oh, 5.5. Okay. So you know, I just think that unfortunately, and this is kind of the thing that sucks. I mean, obviously, cancel game sucks anyway, but hopefully, you know, when I'm feel pretty confident that if my One Ring game has spotty attendance for the summer, that it will, you know, or however long, it'll kind of pick back up. But there's always that danger of it ends up in a kind of a death spiral where like you miss games, then people, you know, it's just easier. You miss one game and then you miss a second game and then there's a third game and it just starts to drift out of your consciousness. And then it's like, oh, like were we playing? Like, what was it? Like, oh, and then, you know, you just kind of, it's very easy for it to just fall off the things and then it's kind of gone. So hopefully just a hiccup for you, Mr. Goats. But all right. I guess I'm going to call it quits. I hope this wasn't too kind of rambly and just kind of blah, blah, blah. But it was a really fun, a really good adventure. I don't know if this adventure is he's just a tester or whether he's going to be developing that adventure to go with the game when it ships or whatever. I have no idea what the status of the adventure is. So sorry if I spoiled it and it ends up being like their starter adventure. But it was definitely fun. Yeah, that is CROWS, everybody. I guess that's all I got. Mr. Goat says, have a good night. So yeah, I am free to get out of here. So have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.